Hi, my beautiful friends. I'm Shana Narrow, and this training is about how to completely break through of your fear to change. So, I want to get into this by starting with the question about where does our fear really come from? Hey there. If you have any questions, say hi, hit like. If you have any problems hearing me, please let me know that as well because I tested it and I'd love to get some feedback if you can hear me okay. All right. Where does our fear to change come from? Now, we have to start breaking through our fear to change by number one, realizing that our fear to change does not come from what is actually true. Our fear comes from two main places. The first place that our fear comes from is our mind, our thoughts, our beliefs, our worst case scenarios. Um, and we'll talk more about why it is that these beliefs get generated. But it's really important to understand that the fear, even though it locks us in, it makes us feel like there's no other option. We have to get very deeply that the fear is not based on something real. It is a creation of our mind. I'm going to help you learn how to do that and be able to get into your mind and reorient yourself. I'm going to help you stretch your mind and start to learn how to focus on the facts instead of focusing on the fear, which are not based on the facts. Okay? So the fear is coming from something in the mind that is not true, number one. Number two, the fear is also coming from a certain part of our brain that is survival based. Now, it's either coming from both of these places or just one or just the other. So before we can begin to stretch our mind and begin to focus on what's true, on the real facts, and shift away from the fear, we have to start actually by seeing if our survival brain is getting activated. Because when the survival brain is getting activated, we are going to instinctually be in a place of fear, and we're not going to be able to rationalize ourselves out of it. We're not going to be able to use any facts, any truth to rationalize ourselves out of it until we learn how to actually switch off the survival brain. Once we switch off the survival brain, then we can really, if we are still having fear, then we can know that it's coming from beliefs that we have. It's coming from a narrow focus that we just have not developed the skills to be able to stretch our mind beyond and let something else in. So, just about the survival brain, how do we switch off the survival brain? Because if you're feeling fear on a regular basis to change, whether it be breaking through over and over again, repeated binging, or just food habits that seem to control you, whether it be not being able to make the changes for creating healing in your body, your health issues, whatever it is. So your survival brain may be active, and so you're going to be wasting your energy to be going and expanding your mind and bringing in the truth, which is going to, the truth does dispel the fear, but we'll talk about how to do that. First of all, survival brain. So you need to become an observer of your state, because half of us, or more than half of us, are walking around not realizing that we're in survival mode, okay? And what is it that brings a person into survival mode? Well, there's many things, and actually we live in a society where we are basically being pushed into survival mode much of the time unless we're aware of it and we know how to prevent that from happening. So the types of things that bring us into survival mode are overstimulation from our environment. For example, the internet, the phone going off, the kids crying, overstimulation, or outside shopping, noises, smells, fumes, any kind of overstimulation can put a person into this alarm mode, like fight or flight. Then we've got strong emotions. Strong emotions also put a person into survival mode, and that's because literally there's this instinctual wiring where way back, okay, thousands of years ago, we would be getting attacked, and that would trigger emotions, and that would make us run away in order to protect ourselves. So right now, we rarely are getting attacked by animals or people, but we frequently are getting strong emotions. And so if we haven't learned how to channel those strong emotions, and that's the key, then it's going to throw us into survival mode. So that's the second thing that will throw us into survival mode. Third thing that will throw us into survival mode is basically if it's a habit that we've learned from our past. And so here we get into needing to learn how to rewire the neural associations. If there was trauma, if we just lived in stressful environments, it can become the habit. And so then we need to basically retrain ourselves to feel safe, to feel secure, to feel calm, relaxation techniques. And then there's a lot of neurolinguistic programming techniques that I teach where we literally rewire the habit so that our automatic is not feeling stress, but rather our new habit, we can unlearn that stress response, and our new habit can become about feeling calm and safe. Even if we're emotional, even if something is not okay in terms of circumstantial, in terms of something not going the way we want it to go, we can still feel okay. And so it's not going to trigger fear in us. So that's about the survival brain and about how that puts us in fear and how that alone can basically be keeping someone stuck and keeping someone afraid of changing because they're holding on so tightly. There's no space to let in, to expand and see something beyond that fear. Literally, they're holding on for their life. They feel like they have to protect themselves. I mean, if you're a parent, you've probably noticed, like, especially during these times, we're parenting and we're doing a million other things, and we are not always at our best because we feel like we're just surviving. Okay, so it's really number one key about finding those ways to make a feeling of calmness be our regular state, or know how to shift into it and know that everything's okay, even if it's not going exactly the way we want it to go. Okay, so once we've looked at whether or not our survival brain is in overdrive, is active, and is basically controlling us and keeping us locked into fear, then we can go to the next part. The next part is about one's mindset and learning to, as I said, base the way we think and we feel on what's true, rather than on false things that we have created that are usually past-based, that are usually based on our past experiences. There's a general tendency to feel that the past is going to repeat itself. That is also an instinctual protective mechanism. But with cultivating awareness and consciousness, this is what makes us different than animals, okay? We can learn to control these parts of our brain and shift into different ways of living. We can learn to make these different ways of consciousness actually our regular habit. If your regular habit is being in survival mode, if your regular habit is being in fear, why can't your regular habit be being centered and calm? Okay, that we're going to have our times where we're challenged. And I also want to say here, this is a perfect place, perfection, okay? Because I'm going to talk about now how you can go in and begin to stretch your mind and begin to see actually what's true instead of the fear that's based on beliefs that are not true. So, okay, we have to think about two ways of thinking and start shifting. Fear equals fixed mindset. And growth mindset is what we need to shift into. So how do we do that? What I am going to suggest for starters is that you begin to ask yourself some questions about what you're really afraid of. You're going to there's many ways and methods of doing this, but one method of doing this is you begin to ask yourself, is this fear true? And you're going to just get some answers. You're going to ask yourself, what is the worst that could happen if I try to make some changes in the way I eat? And then see what your answer is. And then what I started to say, and then I lost my train of thought here, is that we have to be very careful that we are not using the idea of perfection to keep us stuck in our fear, okay? Life is not about achieving perfection. So we have to let that go, because if we are thinking that becoming perfect is what we're going for, we're going to keep believing that it's impossible, and we're going to keep being afraid. So this growth mindset is pretty much the opposite of perfection. This growth mindset, okay, the fixed mindset, the fear mindset, is all about the worst case scenario. That is what is fueling it. And then again, failures of the past could be fueling it. Low self-esteem could be keeping that fear in your main focus. So what we need to do is we need to start with this growth mindset to basically adopt a thinking that is about learning from our mistakes, learning from everything that happens to us, meaning if I make a decision right now that I'm going to do one small thing differently and I fail, what's the worst that happened from that? So we want to ask ourselves, what is the worst that could happen from this? And then ask ourselves, what is the best thing that could happen from making this one small change? So we want to begin thinking of our desired outcome Let's say it is to feel more in control of food. And we want to start looking at painting a picture of what that looks like. And we want to paint that picture, let's say in a few weeks from now, a few months from now. Ask yourself, what would my life look like if I make these small changes right now in 6 months, in 1 year, in 5 years? And what would my life look like if I decide not to make any change and completely stay the same? What would my life look like in 6 months, 1 year, 5 years? Now, the point is not about perfection. The point is not that we have to perfectly achieve that. However, the point is we have to stay focused on growth. And we have to shift away from fear, fixed mindset on the worst case scenario, on all the traumas that cause us to believe that we're not good enough and we can't do it. And we need to shift into growth mindset, which is, this is what my life could look like in 6 months, 3 months, 1 month, or 5 years from now. And we want to continually focus on that. Whatever you focus on is going to directly affect how you feel. It's directly going to affect whether or not you are afraid to take one little step right now. So what you focus on, and knowing that you are not seeking perfection. Growth mindset is about, I am in a process of trying my best and improving at whatever rate I can, at whatever rate winds up happening. There's no failure. Even a failure is just a learning experience and will eventually get you moving towards your goal. So it's so incredibly important that you keep thinking to yourself, and we are basically using the principles of pain and pleasure, and this is my last point. We are using the principles of pain and pleasure to rewire yourself here so that the fear gets associated with pain, okay? In the fixed mindset, your fear is actually associated with some kind of pleasure of comfort, of staying the same. And we have a mechanism in our brain that by default is going to want us to stay the same. We're afraid of change. That's totally true. But once we have this awareness, we can, again, it's malleable. We can change our brain, and we begin to focus on the things that will lead us towards change and success. So we just totally accept the fact that we might fail, and that's okay. What we value is that we're trying, that we're going to take one step. And so it's just about one step in front of the other. And I want you to start putting pain on staying the same. Okay, for some people, it's like focusing on the vision of what you're going to feel like in 6 months can be a really powerful motivator. And for other people, to keep thinking about what their life is going to look like in 6 months or 1 year if they don't decide to do anything differently, the pain of that is actually a much bigger motivator. So you want to work with pain and pleasure, and you want to start changing what you're associating with pain or pleasure. And this can be done in so many ways. Let me just throw you one little technique here. These things take practice, but you can take a food that you associate with pleasure, that you can't resist, and you can begin associating that food with pain. Either it makes you sick, or you actually, and there's like a very specific technique to go through this, but I'm just explaining and you can try it, is you want to think about that food in a really gross form. Let's say it's moldy. Let's say it's rotten. Let's say it has bugs in it. And so you condition yourself. You repeat this until it gets conditioned. And I've had clients be able to quickly stop getting pulled to food that they could not resist before by using this technique. So that is a really good example of how you can begin to take control of your mind. You can begin to change the fear that you are having from moving forward, and all of a sudden now that staying the same, that not wanting to change is all of a sudden going to become painful for you, because you're going to think about what your life is going to be like in 6 months or a year if you do nothing and you stay the same. So I'm going to leave it at that. If you have any questions, you can put them in the comments or get in touch with me, and I'm happy to answer those questions. Put like at the bottom if you like this. I think we're going to talk next time about motivation, because that's, I think, where this is leading, at least for me, that we need to really address then. How can a person be highly motivated? Because that is going to be one of the biggest factors determining success. And there's ways that we can, again, spark massive motivation. So we're going to talk about that. In the meantime, if any of you want support and want me to make a plan for you on how to move forward and help you to really see what hasn't been working, I'm going to put a link below where you can sign up for a free call with me, and I'd be happy to help you, to really help you figure out what you need to do now to move forward. So that's it for now. Have a beautiful day, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.